get it during at the past meetings up on the PCC Club website. So today's topic today is Chrome PC by myself, Tom Kreuzer. Normally what we do in the Personal Computing Club, if we look here on this screen, we normally are talking about Windows or Microsoft Windows or Apple Macintosh, but today we're going to be adding a new one in here, and this is the Chromebook. So we'll get to that as our main topic. First, we'll cover some club information. The next MaxSig is this Friday, October 23rd, and that's going to be on Zoom. And they'll be talking about Apple News, the iPhone 12 family, the HomePod Mini, holiday discounts, and questions. Also, once a month, I do question and answer, usually the first Tuesday of the month. And so the next one of those is going to be November 3rd, and I'll send out links for that when we get closer to the date. Our next general meeting is Wednesday, November 18th. And normally that's our pizza party where we have pizza and pop, but it'll just have to be virtually pizza and pop. But we'll talk about the same thing that we usually do every year. So we will be talking about holiday gift ideas and what's popular. Our officers, Jim Holman is our president, Linda Brown is our vice president, Paul Ebert is our membership secretary, Mike Griffin is our treasurer and MaxSig, Chuck Scott is our secretary, Andrew Petrucci is our communication coordinator, and my name is Tom Kreuzer. I'm a director at large. Members old and new can pay their dues to Paul. Since we aren't physically in the meeting, you usually have to mail or electronically, and Paul will send out notices when your dues are due. So not everybody is due at the same time, and you'll get that. And just a reminder, if you are changing your email, your service provider or email, to notify us, because that's the way we send out notices and keep in touch. If you do have suggestions for topics, you can mail any of the board members. And if you'd like to volunteer to present on any hardware or software, that'd be great. And we do have our monthly eBytes newsletter that you can write an article for or just an experience that you had. Our website contains these slides and handouts. And where we can, if we record it, we post that out there. We also have a deal section, eBytes newsletter, and there's the link there. And the link is also in all the emails that we send out. As I mentioned before, if you haven't, mute your audio and you can turn off your video. Use the chat to ask a question during the presentation, and I'll leave time at the end where we'll open it up and go through the chat, and also if people want to ask a question at that time. And the handout, like I mentioned, is out on the chat, or if it isn't out there yet, check the past meetings spot on the website there. Okay, our main topic today is the Chromebook PC, and I'll be presenting. My name is Tom Kreuzer, and most Chromebooks are clamshell laptops, but some of them have a touchscreen display and convert into a tablet. Those are usually called 2-in-1 laptops. So on the left here, we have a traditional laptop where the display opens up from the keyboard and you operate and you see things in front of you. The 2-in-1s, if you haven't seen them before, are the hinge allows the display to be opened up and put back on top of the laptop itself. So you can operate it like a tablet, and the 2-in-1s usually have a touch screen, and you can operate it that way. A Chromebook looks like any other Windows or Macintosh laptop because you have a keyboard, you have a trackpad, you have a camera, you have a built-in screen. But as you'll see when we go through these slides, they are different. Chromebooks, the main difference is the Chromebooks use the Chrome the Google Chrome operating system. So they don't use Microsoft Windows operating system or the Apple Macintosh operating system. So that's what makes them very different from the other two. The Chrome web browser is the primary user interface to connect to the cloud, internet, or web services. So I lump all those together. You've probably seen it listed in articles and different places. You've seen the word cloud, you've seen the word internet, you've seen the word web. Well, they kind of all mean the same thing. It's something that your local device is connecting to. And for the most part, I'll be talking about that as the cloud. And this web browsers by their nature are usually connecting to things outside of your local computer. So they're connecting to these cloud services and cloud storage to store the files and save things. The Chromebook or the Google operating system was created by Google in 2011, so it's not even 10 years old yet. And nearly every PC manufacturer, except for Apple and Microsoft, have created Chromebook models. So you'll see models of Chromebooks out there for HP makes them, Dell makes them, Lenovo makes them, LG, Google, Toshiba, Samsung, Acer. Almost everybody has Chromebooks, and that's why there's so many different models, and they're coming out with different ones literally every month. And after this presentation, I hope before you buy a new laptop that you'll consider a Chromebook for your next laptop, because they are starting to replace Windows and Apple in the laptop market there. This is a little numbers here. The Chromebook PCs, again, the operating system itself started out in 2011. By 2014, they were selling 5.3 million a year. By 2019, that was 10.1 million, and they're projected to be selling 17 million by 2023. So that's quite a rapid rise for a newcomer, relative newcomer of less than 10 years. Many of the models, the early models and stuff like that, were sold to schools due to their low cost and the functionality that they provided. But actually, they're a perfect fit for most people. And by most people, that may be 80 to 90% of the people that are currently using laptops and other devices there. This chart over on the right-hand side is a chart I found talking about the market share of Chromebooks compared to Microsoft and Apple in the education space. So in 2011, basically Microsoft and Apple had about a 50-50 split of market share selling to the schools. Since that time, you can see the Google Chrome has worked its way up to now it's the dominant device used in schools today, with Microsoft and Apple just garnering maybe 20% market share, each of them, and Google taking. And this is going to continue to grow, and I would guess, give it another 3, 4, 5 years, it'll all be Chrome, and there won't be hardly any Microsoft or Apple there. Unfortunately, with all this popularity, both in the schools and from people at home, there's been shortages of the Chromebooks this year. So some of the models are hard to find, and that's due to the distance learning, people wanting a laptop with a camera and trying to keep it simple and cost-effective there, and also people working at home in general. So Chromebooks are great for that. This is interesting. In the last month, when Apple came out with its developers conference, one of its statements was you know you've kind of made it in the industry when Apple starts attacking you. So Apple was going after Chromebooks, and one of their pitches, or their main pitch, is saying an iPad is 6 times faster than the top-selling Chromebook. So they're telling the schools, pay 2 to 3 times as much for that iPad, and aren't your children worth having the faster speed of the iPad? Well, the reality is, as you'll see with the presentation here, speed is not the issue, because most of the work is being done up at the cloud server. So having a faster iPad, things are going to look exactly the same or pop up exactly the same on the iPad or the Chromebook. It's not 6 times faster bringing up a web page. It's not 6 times faster letting you open your email and do things. In fact, it's slower. So, but it was interesting that Apple has started to attack Chromebooks there. Okay, this is an ad that came out last year. It's why switch to Chromebook, and the ad is done by Bill Nye, and he's exploring the principles of doing it. Now, because we were getting a little bit of feedback, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and then connect back and share with my audio turned on so that you can hear this. So 1 second here. Let's see if I can find, where am I here? Let's see, where, here we go, presenting. Couldn't find the stop presenting, so found that finally. Now we'll do the audio and share my screen again, and we'll get this video going here.
Fear. It's our natural evolutionary response to the unknown. We humans have developed fear over millions of years to help us cope with the dangerous world around us. But you're not living in a cave. You don't fear getting eaten alive, and yet you fear something as small as switching from your old laptop to a new Chromebook. One boots up as fast as 6 seconds, the other takes forever. One has built-in virus protection, the other should be quarantined. So why haven't you switched? To understand, we need to go where fear starts, in the brain. You want to switch to Chromebook, but your amygdala is saying, I'm scared, while your prefrontal cortex is saying, but you need a new laptop. It's like your cave person brain just wants to run, while your modern brain is saying, chill out, dog. It's just a Chromebook. You shouldn't fear switching to Chromebook. It's a good decision. But sometimes it's hard to let go of a bad decision. In behavioral economics, this principle is commonly known as the sunk cost fallacy. Let me give you an example. Let's say you paid for a vacation months in advance. And you work hard, you deserve it. But when you arrive, there's a giant storm. And you're determined to stick it out because you've already paid for it. But just like your old laptop, you should probably just let go. But I get it. Fear of loss can cause irrational attachment to things familiar to us. It's called the status quo bias. Ah, my old friend. We've been through a lot together. You know, you weren't supposed to see that. But there's constant updates, patches, it never ends. Not to mention it takes forever to start up. And it won't be long before it freezes. Or worse. But when you switch to Chromebook, which starts up fast and updates automatically with no interruptions, you don't have to worry about any of that. And if you lose it for whatever reason, all your stuff is safely backed up on the cloud. And it works offline, even with Netflix, which is good, because I have a flight to catch. Remember, When we overcome our fears, we can accomplish great things. So don't let fear win. Switch to Chromebook.
Okay, let me turn back off my sharing there. So 1 second here. I'm going to stop presenting. Then let's go back. And let me get. Okay, so that was a little video there. It covered a number of points there. But what we'll go into now is some detail on what they do well. And then after that, we'll talk about some of the things that they don't do so well. So the number one thing that they do well is low cost. Models start at $150, and you can get a very good basic machine for $300 to $600. There are high-end models that start at $1,000 on up, and spending more will get you a better quality laptop or two-in-one, give you a higher display, a few more features, and faster performance. The most expensive Chromebook is a Google Pixel, Pixelbook at $1,700. It has a Core i7 processor, 16 gig of RAM, and 512 gig of hard disk. But again, most people are not going to need anything near that. You can do almost everything on a Chromebook that you can do in a browser connected to the internet. So the things that we talk about, email, social media like Facebook or Instagram, all of that's available, web browsing, streaming video, YouTube's audio, whether it's Pandora, iTunes, Amazon Prime, all that's available. What you can do if you're not sure what you're currently using, or if you can get by with a lot of stuff in the browser, is inventory what you do on a daily basis to see if you need more than a browser. Just like Chrome, because the Chromebooks are using the Chrome web browser, there's many extensions for Chrome and themes and plugins. And they're available out at the Chrome web store. And there are things like I use ad blocker, I use LastPass, there's shopping bots, things like that. All of these plugins and that if you've used those in Chrome, are also can be installed on the Chromebook Chrome. In addition to running the Chrome browser, most of the current models, in fact almost all of them, will let you run some Android apps. So they don't run all of the Android apps because many Android apps were not designed to work on a larger computer screen or without a touch screen. So that's where you may have mixed results with some of the Android apps. The bigger Android apps and the companies have converted over their Android apps so that they work well on a Chromebook there. As an example, Microsoft converted Microsoft Office 365, so that does work as Android apps on a Chromebook. Chromebooks are also starting to gain access to some Linux applications, things like Audacity, Firefox, GIMP, OBS Studio, Stream, VirtualBox, and other Linux apps. Some other things that they do well, probably the number two thing is this combination of they are a low hardware requirement. And by that, the operating system is so much smaller than Windows. So if we looked at Windows, how many hundreds of millions of lines of code go into Windows, you're talking a small fraction of that code being in Chromebook. So the operating system is so much smaller, so the CPU can be so much smaller, the RAM can be so much smaller, and the storage can be so much smaller. These are some recommended minimums that if you are going to buy Look for a Intel processor, or whether it's the M series or the I series. You want at least 4 gigabytes of RAM of memory. Now, Windows wouldn't run in 4 megabytes, but that's fine for a Chromebook there, because again, the processing, the majority of the processing is occurring up on the cloud server. It's not occurring locally on the laptop. 32 gigabytes of storage, and this is not a hard drive. It's like a flash drive. It's your static storage there, and you're using cloud storage for most of your user files. So you use like a Google Drive or OneDrive on Microsoft, or wherever you store your information up on the cloud there. Most of them also do support an SD card, or you could plug in an external USB if needed, but really you aren't buying a Chromebook to store files on. You should be using the cloud storage to store all of your stuff. Another thing to look for in a Chromebook is full HD, and that's 1920 by 1080 pixels. So the video and the resolution, you usually want to have at least that quality there. Screen sizes vary from 10.5 to 15. If this is going to be your primary machine in the house, you may want a bigger display like the 14, 15 inch. But if you're looking to use it as a tablet, so you buy a 2-in-1 and you want to carry it on your lap or that, maybe all you need is a 10.5 inch. So just like any laptop, it depends on what you really are going to use it for and what you might need there. Another big advantage is they have long-lasting battery life. It's usually 8 to 12 hours, and that's because of the limited hardware. It doesn't have the fastest CPU. It doesn't have a lot of RAM. So it doesn't have a moving hard drive in it, so it's not going through battery life as much as other laptops there. And usually they also have smaller batteries, which is okay because you're still getting the 8 to 12 hours. But using these smaller batteries in the laptop mean less weight and thickness of the laptop itself. So you end up with really lightweight. Well, here's the next one. Lightweight, thinner, smaller, and more durable, because there literally are no moving parts within it. Dropping it and they tend to be more durable than other laptops. Like Bill Nye talked about, there's fast startup. So unlike Windows, that for some people it may take minutes to start up, these start up in 6 to 10 seconds from the time you turn it on till you're ready to use the browser or open up an Android app. Also very fast opening up the apps, loading pages, and shutting down are very fast. They rarely crash or lock up. Updates to the operating system are occurring in the background, and they happen automatically. And because the operating system is so much smaller, the updates are very, very small, similar to minor updates that you have on your phones, smartphones today. So they're smaller to download and faster to install. Because it's a Google operating system and you're using Google Chrome, it's very well integrated in with services like Google Docs, Google Photos, Google Drive, Google Music, any of the cloud services that Google has there. Very secure. They aren't prone to attacks. They do support sandboxing, automatic updates, verified boot, power washes. And because, again, you're talking a fraction of the code that Windows has or an Apple has, there's less code for hackers to find vulnerabilities in. So it makes it very, very hard to hack because there's so little code to work with there. Another advantage is simpler to use or learn. Very good for children, students, and seniors. Less options than other operating systems. So not as many complex menus, not 6 ways to do the same thing. So it makes it easier to train and easier to do things on. Great for schools, and now businesses are starting to adopt them more and more because of the low cost, security, they're sturdy, and the software limitations. So it actually is a benefit to many businesses and schools, the fact that all this other software can't get loaded on the machine, so they have better control over the machine also. As we mentioned before, cloud servers are doing most of the work. So a $250 Chromebook can perform as well as a $2,000 Mac laptop. And so the limitations are really, when you're talking about using cloud services and cloud storage, is your internet connection and the service that you're connecting to. It's not the CPU of the Chromebook itself that's the bottleneck in this particular thing. So that's why you can get by with a cheaper machine there. Currently, Google is giving 100 gigabytes of free Google Drive space for a year with most Chromebook purchases. So this if you do want to migrate your data, if you have lots of files or things like that, again, it's not like you're going to have to pay for a lot of stuff. There's ways to get your data up there. The machines also do support Bluetooth, so things like headphones and mics and things like that, or wireless mouse or things like that, they're all supported. This is a little graphic trying to hit home what we've talked about with the separation of who's doing what. On the Chromebook, it's what's known as a thin client, because you have the browser or the Android apps running down here, and that means less hardware, less software, less problems down here. They all connect to the cloud, the internet, or the web, and use servers up here. Well, the servers are where the horsepower and where the real work is being done. And then the servers also have the storage, the cloud storage up here. So that's in a nutshell how the Chromebook is working. Thin client connecting to these services out here. They do lots of things well, but there's some things that they don't do, and that's what we'll cover next. So it's not all perfect and that out there. So what don't they do so well? Well, it's not natively compatible with Windows or Macintosh software. So if you have a package, let's say like a Quicken, you cannot load that up on a Chromebook. So they do make some emulators, things like called VMware, but I don't recommend anyone buy a Chromebook and try and run Windows software or Mac software on it. If you need specific Windows or Mac applications and there's no substitute, either on the cloud or with an Android app, then a Chromebook is not for you. But for most people, again, probably that 80-90%, a Chromebook will fit fine. There's enough applications, there's enough web services to give you everything that you need. Even if something isn't out there right now, companies are constantly adding new Android apps or cloud services to become more sophisticated. An example of that is Adobe. Adobe's Lightroom CC cloud photo editing software is now nearly identical to the PC software counterpart. So you can do very sophisticated editing in Adobe Lightroom there on a Chromebook because, again, it's that web service that's providing all of that. It's not being done locally on the laptop there. And as I mentioned before, you can even run Microsoft Office apps. So the vendors, because the market is growing so fast in that, a lot of the software that used to just run on a Windows platform or on a Macintosh platform is being converted over to run as a web service or as an Android app there. I mentioned here many Android apps will not run on the Chromebook. That's due to maybe they don't support anything other than a touchscreen or GPS or other facilities. That is changing, and more apps are being updated to work on a Chromebook. For the most part, the cloud, internet, or web connection is required. Because you're using web services, because your files are stored up in the cloud, if you don't have a connection to the internet, you really can't do that much. Now, there are some apps out there, Bill Nye mentioned it, there are some apps like Netflix or YouTube or that do let you do some offline, download a movie, watch a movie on the plane kind of a thing. But again, it's somewhat limited, and certainly not all applications support offline capabilities. The Chromebooks usually use the slower, inexpensive eMMC flash storage memory. And this is compared to other solid-state hard drives on some of the other laptops. And it really isn't that much of an issue, because again, you're not really storing, or you shouldn't be storing much locally on the laptop. It should be up on the cloud storage there. They do have slower CPUs for processing. They do have limited memory and limited graphics. But again, most people are not doing that processing locally on their machine, so it shouldn't be a problem there. But again, it is slower there. I mentioned here only basic photo or video editing capabilities are available to do locally on the hard drive. For the most part, you're uploading it to the cloud, to things like that, Adobe Lightroom, or to Google Photos, or things like that to do the things that you want to do. And I mentioned here, not good for heavy multitaskers. That's due to the slow CPU, the memory. They usually don't support multiple displays. Some people like to have 2 or 3 displays, screens up at the same time, and things like that. If you can have multiple browser windows and multiple tabs up, so everything that you can do in a browser, having multiple things there, that's what Chromebook is good for there. Also, it's not real good for heavy gamers because of the slow CPU and limited graphics. So if you're in one of the role-playing games or shooters or stuff like that, because of the slower CPU and things like that, you're probably going to be the first one knocked out of the game there. But they can do a lot of games, 90% of the games. It's just the games that are very heavily CPU intensive locally on the hard drive and not from the server there. Display size and graphic resolutions are good, but they're not great. If you're going to be a graphic artist and make your living at it, a Chromebook may not be the perfect thing for you there. But for the average person doing graphics and photos and videos, it's going to work fine there. You do have limited ports, usually just 1 or 2 USB or USB-C ports. The USB-C are the smaller ports there, and they use those because a USB port on a Chromebook means that the Chromebook has to be thick to support that plug on the side there. Having the smaller USB-C ports means that the laptops can be thinner and not as bulky as other ones. There's usually no HDMI port, no DVD, no headphone jacks or CDs. You can use a USB to HDMI type cable. So if you did have to display or or want a display, you can buy cables and that to plug in to get some of the capabilities. But by default, you don't have a lot of ports there. Another thing, you can't download or install printer drivers. You have to route your print jobs over the cloud into the Google Cloud Print. And most of the printers now that you buy or have bought for the last 5 to 10 years are Wi-Fi enabled. So if you have a Wi-Fi enabled printer, Chromebook will have no problem at all printing to that. If you don't have one of those, there also is a way to use a desktop Windows machine or a Mac machine and connect to those devices to do your printing. But again, the way they handle devices and printing and things like that is completely different than what you have in a Windows or a Macintosh environment. Most of the laptops don't have a GPS chip, so applications that require location services won't work either. Now, some of the higher end ones that act as a tablet or that may come with a GPS chip. You just have to check what you need there. Most don't have a rear camera. They have a front camera, so you can do the video chats and that, but they don't have a rear camera for taking pictures or things like that. They also have limited file management and utilities, and the reason for that is they're counting on you doing your file management and utilities up on the cloud services. So if you're using a Google Drive, that's where you'd manage it. You wouldn't manage it locally on the laptop. So some other things not so well. Chromebooks only last as long as Google supports them, which is usually 5 to 8 years. So when buying, check its end-of-life date if it's not a current year model. And if you've had a smartphone, you've probably run into this before. Smartphones aren't supported forever. They're only supported for, again, maybe the 5 to 8 year type of deal. So if you look for an original Chromebook that was made in 2012 there, you probably wouldn't want to use it because it isn't being updated anymore. The operating system isn't being updated and can't run a lot of things there. So that's something to keep in mind. It's like I say, similar to the smartphones and the tablets. They're not supported forever, and that's why I recommend when you're buying, check what the end of life date is on the model that you're buying there. Some of the models are in short supply, especially 2020, where people are doing the distance learning and businesses have been having people work from home. So that can create a backlog of orders. As we move into 2021, hopefully some of that will decrease there. Some low-end models have a cramped, smaller, or cheap keyboard. In order to make the unit itself smaller, they reduce the size of the keyboard, and maybe it doesn't have that tactile feel. So if you're going to be using it to type a lot, you'll see a wide variety of keyboards, just like any laptop. Some of them are very good, and some of them are not so good there. Try them out, see what you feel comfortable with. So that's the good and bad of the Chromebooks out there. There's lots of good, and there are some drawbacks there. Next, we'll talk about some recommended models. I'm not going to go into details, but there are new models and vendors coming out every day with new ones. ZDNet, this is a list from ZDNet of the best Chromebooks to buy in 2020. And they broke it out into some different categories there. And you can see that's from Dell and Google, Lenovo, Asus. And they range from $249 to $800. Here's a 2-in-1 convertible that's been recommended, Lenovo, and $279. PC Magazine has a number of categories here, again, ranging from about $250 up to $1,600. And you can take a look at these links and even just Google, you'll find information that'll compare the models, talk about all the features. we won't go into the features and that here, but there is a wide range that'll fit the requirements of just about anybody there. Some additional links and information. In the last few years, Microsoft has created a version of Windows called Windows 10 S, and it's called S mode for budget laptops. And you'll see it installed on some of the laptops that have a limited CPU and limited memory. And it's similar to Chromebook in that it runs the Microsoft Edge browser, but instead of the ability to run Android apps, the only apps that it can run is apps from the Microsoft Store. Now, there's a small fraction of apps available on the Microsoft Store compared to what you see on the Android or Google Play Store. So I don't look at Microsoft 10S as a competitor. They wanted it to compete against Chromebook, but that train has left the station. There's no competition. Don't buy it. If you think that a Chromebook might be right for you, take a Windows PC, download the Chrome browser if you don't have it, and work exclusively with the Chrome browser for a day or so. See if you can do all your stuff within the browser, and if you can't do it within the browser, is there a particular app that you may be using? See if that app would work on the Chromebook. Another thing that you can do, and this is more the hobby kind of an end, but you can turn an old laptop into an awesome classwork PC for the kids or yourself. So this has instructions on how to essentially create the Chrome operating system, and you can install it on a flash drive, or if you have an old laptop, you can install it on the hard drive of the old laptop and still use a laptop that, let's say, is 10 years old, will run fine with Chrome. So this is something that, if you're interested, you can play around with. Okay, that's my presentation there. Let me exit out of here, and I am going to stop presenting, and we'll take a look at the chat. And let's see, demo. Looks like Jim uploaded the handout there, so that's it. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself and you can unmute your video there, and I'm open for questions.
I was wondering if you could use a Chromebook to download books from the library, like you can using a Kindle app on the iPad.
I believe so. The way to test that is certainly if you can do it through a web browser, that'll be no problem. The Kindle app itself, I'm not sure if that works on the Chromebook, but being one of the bigger apps there, I would guess that they've converted it so it does work there. So yes, I believe that you'd be able to read it. Now, again, you do have the limitations of space there that you might run into. You couldn't have a whole lot of books, but certainly, a couple at a time or 3 or 4 or something like that, you could. Okay, Ron asked the question. I thought that the Google Cloud Print would be discontinued in 2020. I'm not familiar with that, but whatever they do, they'll replace it with a similar way to print. Because if you've used your smartphone, essentially the way that you can print from a smartphone, whether it's Apple or Macintosh or that's the way that the Chromebooks work there. So as an example, I have, what do I have? I have a Canon LaserJet. Well, that comes with apps and that you run on the devices, and that uses the Canon print services and that. But I get in general, the comment would be you're not loading or connecting a cable between a Chromebook and the printer. You're going through these third-party printing to get things done there. Other questions or? Does anyone here have a Chromebook? Oh, it looks like Bonnie there. Love my Chromebook, but need to keep a laptop for one program that I use a lot. How can I check end of life on my Chromebook? That I'm not sure how to check the end of life. I just saw that mentioned in some of the articles there, and it's kind of like with, like I mentioned, with phones or tablets. What happens is the vendor, so let's say you bought a Lenovo Chromebook. Lenovo no longer comes up with updates. And so it's not like Lenovo starts out and says, this is when it's going to end. It's more a case of at some point, Lenovo wants you to buy a new laptop. And so they no longer will keep it up to date with stuff. And so that's kind of the emphasis there. And that's where I don't necessarily recommend buying the high-end models. I would recommend buying in that kind of mid-range, the $300 to $600, and then in 5 years or whatever, chances are the technology has progressed that much that the displays are better and things are out there that you'd want a new machine there. Because the batteries on the laptop, you're usually looking at 3 to 5 years before those start being short. So it's an opportunity then, just like with phones and everything else, that you almost have to update them. Other questions, comments? Yes? Oh, I think you muted yourself.
Is the main advantage of a Chromebook over an iPad just that the Chromebook has a keyboard, but no touchscreen?
Yeah, the advantage isn't the keyboard per se, because when the schools will sell it, the schools will, or some of the schools that have the iPads will have the Bluetooth keyboard. So, on a tablet you can add another keyboard or that. The schools, like I say, the main reason that schools love the Chromebooks is they're about a half to a third the price of iPads. So if you're budget and don't have unlimited funds, here's a case of being able to put in a Chromebook there for less than half of what a similar iPad would cost you. Now, can the iPad do more? That's depending on what you're doing and how your curriculum is. The Chromebook can be better for a number of things, and then the iPad. If you're looking for pure portability or something like that, the iPad might be a little better, but again, the market share is going down from Microsoft. Microsoft mainly sells the Surface. So the Surface laptops have the detachable keyboards and tablet. That's what they sell to the schools, and Apple sells the iPads with keyboards and stuff like that also. Okay. John asks, since so much on Chromebook is done on the cloud, quality of internet speed seems to be the key, right? Yes, and yes, it is correct there. With more and more things being done through the internet, through the cloud, the requirement is that you have a faster connection there. Because if that's the bottleneck, that's what's going to be slowing you down. And if you take a typical house and maybe you have 4 people and 4 people are on at the same time, that's where you have to add up all those connections and who's doing what. And gee, we also have Netflix, or we're streaming our TV, so that adds on there. You have to add all that stuff up to see what kind of speed you really need. And thankfully, at least in the Twin Cities and that, you can get from CenturyLink, most neighborhoods now, you can get gigabyte speed for $65 a month. And so speed is less and less of an issue there for everyone. Yeah, and then Ron mentions here, I have an Acer Chromebook issued and managed by a nonprofit. Google Meets works well, and certainly a lot of businesses have started to use them, again, because of the low cost. And from a maintenance, actually from a business standpoint, companies like 3M, when you think of how much a laptop costs, that's a small percentage of the overall cost over the life of the device. Bigger cost usually is maintenance, support. So people having trouble with it not being configured correctly, having to reset it, reload, do things like that. So these devices, because there's less software on them and you're using more of the web services, tend to have a lot less maintenance that has to be done, and resetting of the machines. And if like Bill Nye mentioned, if you lose it, let's say you lose it, well, all your stuff was up on the cloud, your configuration is up on the cloud, you can set up a brand new laptop in less than half an hour, and you'll be back up and running exactly as you were. Okay. Yeah, Jim asked if Bonnie was connected using her Chromebook, and she is. And I know several of my friends and neighbors that I work with have in the last year have gotten Chromebooks, and I've helped them a little bit on theirs, and they love them. Yeah, and Bonnie mentioned she is, and if it's not running correctly, you can do a power wash. Power wash, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of similar to a phone or a tablet reset. So unlike Windows, where people would be deathly scared of doing a reset of Windows, reloading Windows, and losing settings, losing files, losing configurations, and things like that, as I mentioned, it's a lot easier to set up a Chromebook, and the stuff is usually, most of the settings and things like that are stored up on the cloud, and your files are all there. Your files are backed up. Your files are versioned. You have much more security. You have much more control over everything up on the cloud there. Other questions or comments? And because there's so many vendors out there, like I mentioned, you're going to be seeing all kinds of new models and things like that. They can build these things with the less powerful CPUs, which means that's what keeps the cost down. That's what means that the batteries run longer. Because they aren't running as hot as some of the other laptops, that means that they will have less of a failure rate, and that they don't need fans. You usually will not see a fan in any type of Chromebook laptop or that, because it's not needed. They aren't overheating like some of the other laptops that are trying to run fast and things like that.
Tom,
Let's
this is
see.
Linda. Can you hear me?
Yes?
I'm trying to type a message and I can see them on the screen, but my name is not associated with them, and I don't think you're seeing them. And my question that I'm trying to present is, what prevents the sites in the clouds where your files are all being kept from being hacked? I mean, aren't they at risk at some points in time?
Yeah, there's like Google Drive and other places there do store your files. You have complete control over who has access to that. So I can decide to share it with other people or other groups. Similar, I use it for the PC Club. That's how you get some of the handouts and things like that. Or I can make it entirely private so that I'm the only one that has access there. Now, in terms of you were talking about what's prevents hacking. Well, hacking can happen locally on your machine, or it can happen up on a server. Hacking can be internal. If somebody has an admin account and password, similar to the Apple breach, I don't know how many years ago it was, when all the photos and the contacts and stuff like that was done. A person working at Apple had an admin password. They thought, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to copy all these files for some of the celebrities. How do you prevent that? Well, you threaten lawsuits against some employees. You're
Okay, but it's probably far less likely to occur than having our personal computer or laptops being infiltrated.
Yeah,
maybe?
You're more secure on the cloud than you are on your desktop or laptop. Because most people do not take care of it. They don't keep it up to date with new versions and things like that. Companies like 3M, you have dedicated personnel making sure that the cloud storage that we have and where we store past orders and things like that, all that stuff is kept up to date. You're monitoring where are these requests for data coming from? Are they coming from Russia? Are they coming from China? Where exactly is stuff happening? So there's constant monitoring of all that stuff. Whereas at home,
we're on our own effectively with our new world that doesn't have that same level of, John is presenting a good question here about requirements for an antivirus program on Chromebook. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just saw that, and I did see your question, or your last question popped up there. The antivirus, you can put some antivirus on the Chromebook, similar to the smartphone. I don't necessarily recommend it, and a lot of places don't recommend it because you really mostly don't need it there. Now, some of the things that people say are antivirus are really just checking the validity of sites and things like that. Well, is that really an antivirus? Not really. It's just filtering out some of the sites and doing stuff. So if you have an antivirus on your phone, then you may want it on the Chromebook. If you feel comfortable using your phone, there's no reason that you shouldn't feel comfortable using a Chromebook without it.
Okay. And then can you explain to me why my name is not being associated with any of the messages I try to type?
You are being associated with it. It's just
do you see it, but I don't, maybe?
Yes, I see it, but you don't. The person
that
sends it, you don't see your name there.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
I guess I
Jim,
didn't want to leave any confusion as to who really loves Bill Nye, the science guy, because I didn't see my name associated with it, and I thought, gee, the group must wonder where that came from. So they knew all along, and I just didn't.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Jim Beardsley asks, doesn't Chrome come with antivirus? Chrome is an operating system. I'm not sure if it's built in or that. I I saw different articles talking about stuff. It said similar to the phone that you can install some plugins or some Android apps to do some stuff. But in general, you don't need it because some of the stuff with antivirus. Uh, you have to understand that whole cycle of antivirus are scanning for patterns to fix a problem, a vulnerability. Well, the way that the Chromebooks work is similar to the phones. As soon as there's a vulnerability that's found, it's usually fixed almost right away. Whereas Windows can take months and months and months because of the testing and the interconnected of the code to other things that they can't patch it as fast because, I was talking about hundreds of millions of lines of code. You just have a small fraction of that to run a browser. And that's essentially what Chromebook is doing. So you're talking about, if it's this wide windows and code, you're talking about this much code necessarily to run a browser there. So they're less vulnerable when there is a vulnerability. Usually one person can look at it, one programmer can look at it and fix it and put out a new version almost immediately. So that patch is fixed even before an antivirus program would have been able to be a definition created and sent out to the antivirus, and it's scanning. And most of the antivirus, when we talk about antivirus and taking over PCs, that's because you downloaded something to the PC. That downloaded something to the PC then took over control of part of Windows, keyloggers, things like that. Well, in a Chromebook, and most of the reason to download is no longer there. What are you downloading for? So you aren't downloading and running something on the PC. So it's really not. It's a different environment and a different way of doing things there. Any other questions? Otherwise,
Tom, wait a minute. This is Linda here. I have one final little question.
yeah.
Your face on the screen has been frozen for about 3 minutes, but I can hear you. Oh, but now you just came back. Is that my weird HP Envy new laptop that maybe is doing that with Windows or what?
Can be a couple of things. Could be your internet connection or your laptop. Could be your
Yeah, that.
Wi-Fi. If your Wi-Fi is getting some interference from something or that.
Okay. Where it takes more processing for your face visual than it does for the voice, maybe, and so it's kind of handling what it can handle, which is being able to still hear you, but you don't have any movement.
Yeah, voice. If you think of it in terms of 60 minutes of, let's say, audio, song or that, would take about 60 megabytes of space. 60 minutes of video, this video that we have here, I'm guessing would be maybe a gigabyte or more of data.
Well, rather than, it's probably something on this HP Envy, and Bonnie's been trying to ask you a question too about hardwiring her Chromebook, which sounds interesting, and I think she wants to get that in before we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, and Ron says his video froze for me too, but his audio was good. Okay.
And that's
Interesting.
dependent. You may have a Comcast, and your neighbors are watching a movie now, and that's going to slow down the pipe to your neighborhood.
Oh, okay. And then Bonnie's waiting for you.
Yeah.
She has a question.
Bonnie asks if I hardwire my Chromebook when accessing bank account, am I safer than using my Wi-Fi? Let me see here. What else? Am I better protected? Wi-Fi. I mean, that's a Wi-Fi question there. If you're using Wi-Fi and you're using an encrypted connection, and it's your Wi-Fi, meaning that you know it's going to the router in your house, you're safe there. If you're at a coffee shop and it's not encrypted and you're not sure, you just connected to the guest, there was a guest network and you connected to it, you could be connecting to, let's say, my phone. And if you connect to my phone and it's not encrypted, I can see most everything that you're doing. So
it sounds like everything we do, and this I'm thinking ahead maybe for Bonnie, it sounds like everything we do on our secured home Wi-Fi system has a higher level of protection.
if
True.
it's been set up, and that's why I recommend people be their own network administrator, know how your home network is set up, know what you're connecting to, set a strong password. So don't use defaults. If you're using defaults, somebody could drive in front of your house, and I could use a default and connect into your home Wi-Fi. That's not a good thing.
Then I guess my side question would be, which is largely irrelevant, but when she refers to hardwire, would she be suggesting an Ethernet connection maybe?
Yeah, she was.
Okay.
Hardwire would be plugging in the Ethernet. There is bypassing the Wi-Fi, which means that it's connected directly to the internet. Somebody couldn't. There's an attack called man in the middle. So if I position myself between you and the internet, then I can watch everything that's happening there. And if it's unencrypted, then that's even easier for me.
So Ethernet is better or worse than a properly secured Wi-Fi connection? You have me confused now for your middle man in the middle thing.
Well, I can't get in the middle of you if you have an Ethernet cable.
Okay.
And also performance-wise, so like on my laptop at home that I'm doing this on, I have an Ethernet cable. I could use Wi-Fi, but I am going to get faster performance out of a hardwired Ethernet than out of any Wi-Fi connection.
Oh, now that brings up a question for another meeting.
You can
Would I maybe want to try connecting with the Ethernet cable from my end? Would that
Well, if you're having trouble where it's freezing and stuff like that, that's one thing to try. Also check your speed to see what speed you get. Frequently,
where do I look for that?
Old routers. People have old routers or are getting a weak signal, and so the performance through the Ethernet may be upwards of 10 times or 100 times faster than using Wi-Fi.
2-year-old router, so I don't know it's that old, but that's interesting. Maybe next time, out of curiosity, for this Microsoft meeting format anyway. I don't see this taking place in our Zoom chats, but out of curiosity, from a technical question standpoint, maybe I'll hook into the Ethernet next time and see if I do experience that. But like you say too, it could be that there's been an increase in Comcast usage near my area here, and now and I have that slower level speed that I chose of 50 megabyte per second or something like that for $40 a month. So I think rather than I've got the 50 rate, and the next higher one is 75. So they're probably prioritizing those people as loads increase in usage too, because that thought has crossed my mind. And since I'm just one person in my household, I have no kids and other people trying to use the computers, it's not a big thing for me, but that's another influence too. Okay, you are always so helpful, and you gave me lots to ponder. I don't know about other people, but good things to ponder about the choices about Chromebook.
Yep,
And
to consider there.
I went to the site that was posted where I could find the handout, and I have to say, it was not easily intuitive for me where I'm actually supposed to be looking. And last time I went there trying to find it, that's when I got that automatic PCC magazine announcement coming up on my screen every day, which since that time I learned how to get rid of that. But I don't want to push the wrong link again. So I'm going to go back later on because this was a really enlightening and informative chat about the Chromebooks that I had questions about when I was out trying to buy a new device 3 months ago. So better late than never, I guess.
Okay.
So thank you, Tom.
Okay, we'll see everybody then. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.